For some reason I have a blocked nose and I have no idea why, because I felt absolutely fine this morning when I got up. But yeah, I don't know, maybe I'm allergic to something. Anyway, today's video is going to be about how to cut effectively, and that period of cutting is going to be about 1.5 to 3 months. Personally, I don't really go through a cutting or bulking phase. I guess I'm on like a very small lean bulk, just when I feel like I can't really hit my sessions anymore, or I'm trying to go for a PB or something like that, I will just increase my calories. That's me, but I know, and I have done cuts in the past, and I have done bad cuts in the past. What would happen is just that my metabolism completely slowed down and I just had no energy to do anything in life. I am going to break this video down into 2 parts. So the first is going to be about training, and then we'll talk about the food and kind of different macros, different types of foods, what foods are kind of best for your cut. If you have watched my video on how to build muscle and lose fat, and you're still following like the sustained fat loss approach because you have had a sustained history of restricting food intake, then please don't listen to the advice in this video because it's not going to help you. I mean, feel free to watch the video if you want to and you like my videos, but in terms of the advice, stick to what is in that video, because this is more like if you haven't had a history of restrictive eating and you just want to lose a little bit of fat. It looks a bit weird without the picture frame, doesn't it? Yeah, I think it looks a little bit weird. Anyway, I'm going to show you the workout part now. The idea here is to cut effectively. The first thing I'd say is to do compound moves where you're engaging more than one muscle group. And that means that I typically stay away from any types of machines and I sway towards like the free weights. So barbells, dumbbells, so that I'm engaging as many muscles as possible. And also I try and target large muscle groups, because the bigger the muscle groups, the more force I can exert, and therefore the more calories I burn as well. I like to keep constant tension because that can be really helpful to keep the load through the muscles, so that's why I'm doing the pulsing squats. And that just means that you exert more force consistently, because when you're at the top of the movement, you're not really engaging any muscles, so that's why I'm staying at the bottom of the movement to engage those muscles in the same period of time. Also, doing some free weighted moves engages loads more muscles than just focusing on doing machine work, because it also requires a lot of stabilization work, which itself is hard enough. I really have to concentrate when I'm doing like lunges or walking lunges or things like that, because I'm also working on stabilizing and keeping my core tight and stabilizing the move. When I'm on like a machine or something like that, it can be really easy for my mind to just kind of switch off and be like, oh, what are we gonna have for lunch today? Also, plyometric work is really effective. I show it quite a lot in my own workouts, but I love it so much because it doesn't ever set a limit or like a bar to how much you can exert. So every time you do, so for example, if you're doing a jumping squat, there's no limit to how high you can jump. So every time you're doing a jumping squat, you're jumping to as high as you can, and therefore you're working as hard as you can. So that can also help burn as many calories as possible because you're pushing yourself as hard as possible. In terms of training effectively for fat loss, HIIT is really effective, mainly because it's just so quick and you just get it over and done with. So when we're talking about cutting effectively, I also mean time efficient, and HIIT really does the job because you should only be able to do it for about 15 to 20 minutes, because the idea is that you're bouncing between intervals of really high intensity exercise where you're just going all out crazy beast mode, whatever you want to call it, and then complete rest. So you're changing between those two states, and there's only so long you can do it for. So when you're exerting yourself fully, you're already going to start to fatigue, and you should only be able to like sprint as fast as you can for a maximum of 30 seconds, even though you'll start slowing down, and then maintaining that about 10 to 15 times. I also like to do 2 types of HIIT in one session. I'll do some sprints and then I'll do some rowing, because that kind of changes the muscles that I'm using, but it still means that I'm getting my heart rate up as high as possible. Whereas if I was sprinting all the time, pretty much after like the first 3 sprints, they'd all be slowed down a lot more and my heart rate wouldn't get up to as high as it could be. So that's why I like to change between 2 different exercises in a HIIT routine. They're my 3 tips for training effectively. So compound moves with free weights to engage large muscle groups, and stabilization and using your body as a whole. Plyometrics, because you don't limit the amount of energy that you expend per move, because there's no limit to how high you jump or how far you jump or things like that. And then HIIT in terms of cardio, because it's just really time efficient. 15-20 minutes doesn't seem that long when you're just sitting around watching TV, but when you're actually doing that workout, you are counting every second, believe me. Yay, my muscle food delivery came, so let's go have a look to see what has arrived, because I think it's actually a lot of stuff. Oh, I also have some like vegan, like meatless vegan jerky soy. I've had it before, it's actually really nice. The thing is, I wish I could say that this would last me a month, but I think I just eat too much for it to last a month, but it will last a good couple of weeks at least. So now we're going to talk about the food aspect of being on an effective cut. So there are 5 main tips. The first one, which is probably the most important one, is not to drop your calories by too much. And by too much, I mean like a maximum of about 100 calories. And I say that because you're going to be doing this for 3 months, and you don't want to see results really, really quickly, because the quicker the results, the less sustainable the results are. And the thing is, when I drastically decreased my calories, I did see a decrease in body fat and body weight relatively quickly, but I tell you what, I put it straight back on afterwards. So here you're just going to let your body adapt really slowly to a tiny, tiny caloric deficit, because what you want is to still feel really energized. Like, I know lots of people talk about going through a cut and not really enjoying it and feeling really sluggish. I want you guys to still feel really good and still feel really energized and ready for your sessions and fueled for your sessions. So you want to make sure that you're eating enough calories to hit those sessions and make sure that they're really intense. So when you're in a cut, there are lots of studies that suggest that it's important to keep your protein just a tiny bit higher than you would on a normal diet. That's because you want to preserve that muscle that you've worked really hard to build. So start off with about 1 gram per pound of body weight, and if you don't track, then just make sure you're keeping like your protein levels relatively high. In terms of protein, I look at like fish, meats, lean meats, eggs. I've even got some egg whites here, but if you're vegan, I've got Lindor. If you're vegan, then you can go for like vegan protein powders. Even this high protein pasta is really good, and it's really high in protein, and that's vegetarian. But then like some pulses, quinoa, and beans and other things like that are high in protein will help keep your protein levels relatively high if you struggle to kind of get that in from your normal diet. So the 100 calorie deficit should come from either fats or carbs, and you can choose based on what suits your diet best. So I talked about carbs last video, and if you want to take out 100 calories from carbs, then feel free, but if you prefer a higher carb diet, then maybe take down the fats, or maybe just do like a 50-50, so you're decreasing, but do keep your protein relatively high. Another really important tip is to keep the volume of food that you're eating really high. So do that by eating low impact foods. Low impact foods are basically foods that are low in calories per 100 grams. So for example, if you're having dessert, why not just have like loads and loads of strawberries, loads and loads of berries, because they don't have many calories in them per 100 grams, and that means you can eat more of them. Same in terms of your savoury meals, so just add loads of vegetables like tomatoes, sweet potatoes, normal potatoes, even like quinoa, loads of foods that are available that usually, I guess if you weren't really thinking about it, you wouldn't really add too much of them. But really make sure that you're padding out your meals so that you feel full. You can still feel full and be in a caloric deficit, but by feeling full, you'll never feel like you're restricting at all throughout your diet. Another thing I like to do is to make kind of like food swaps. So if you really like Greek yogurt, then just swap it out for like a low-fat strained Greek yogurt or some soya yogurt, because that's also really low in fat. So just kind of like swap out some foods. And again, with like cheese, there are always alternatives that you can have to kind of swap in and out those foods. You don't have to, it just can make it easier. If you're a real cheese lover and you can't just have like a tiny little slice, then if you want like bigger chunks, maybe have something like the Eat Lean protein cheese or something like that. And then my last tip is something that I would always recommend, even when you're on a caloric deficit, is to just allow yourself to have some treats. It would be unreasonable to think that you can go for 3-4 months and not have anything sweet or something that you like. So it is really important to kind of keep you feeling happy as well, because for me, I love food, so if I were to cut anything out, I'd really struggle. So it's just about finding like a small balance and allowing yourself to have some treats. So that's why I had the Lindt Lindor, because they're my favourite, and I'm gonna have one now because I love them so much. Okay, so I'm gonna end the video here, but I've got 3 last like little pointers just to be aware of for your cut. So the first is to not neglect sleep. I definitely neglected sleep, but in the end it just kind of, it unbalances your hormone levels, and also you won't be able to recover as quickly from the intensity of your sessions. So sleep is really important. Another one is trying to reduce stress. Because the more stress we're on, again, it just changes the profile of our hormones and it's harder for us to lose fat. So whatever it takes for you to just feel a little bit more relaxed, and it is hard, like you guys are at work, at school, you've got exams and whatnot, and that's really stressful. So try and find something that reduces stress, and it can be like having a bath, seeing your friends. It doesn't even have to be like an activity where you're exercising. It can be anything, but those little things make a massive difference. And then the last thing is just to kind of remember that this is a 3-month thing, and if you're not seeing results really quickly, that's a good thing. Because the longer it takes for you to see results, the longer your results will stay. Please don't be discouraged if after a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks you're not really seeing much of a difference, because it will just start coming together eventually. I'm the same, like sometimes I can be really impatient and just be like, oh, I just want this to work, why isn't it working? But I just have to remember that everything is just a really slow process. So don't feel discouraged, and yeah, I think they're all of my tips. If you liked this video, please give me a big thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys very soon. Bye!